and welcome to Working Dragon Mystic Community Topic. Tonight we are going to be continuing our Mage-Minded series, and we're going to be talking about wisdom and why it is so vitally important to a magician. Again, we are doing this live in our community, so if you ever want to join these topics live instead of just catching the replay, check us out at the workingdragonmystic.com community. You can find it at workingdragonmystic.com. Hit the community tab, or there'll be links below. Check us out. We have a lot of fun over here. We got the community topics, and we have an entire thing we do for supporters as well, and an online school. So now with that, let's get into this. Wisdom. There's a lot of debates about what is actually the most important thing for a mage. Now, when we talked about self-knowledge, I actually did point that might be one of the more important ones. But wisdom, there's a form of self-knowledge and wisdom that I would say would weave into it, but it's definitely going to be in those top tiers. Like, I'm sure philosophers could debate this practically as long as we live, right? But definitely in the top bracket of things that is most important for a practitioner. And one of the reasons I tell people not to rush path workings, you only cheat yourself if you rush a path working, if you rush spell work, or if you rush your progress. Because getting through the path working isn't the goal. People want to do path workings in Magic like it's a video game. They're trying to get to the end of the game and beat the game. That's not it. Learning it is not enough. You can't just learn the material. You need to seek the deeper meanings in the materials that are not just handed to you in a video or in a book. And it's very easy to see, honestly, from anyone who has actually taken time, slowly worked through something, and they've seen those deeper meanings and everything. Like, you can spot someone who rushed through a path working like at a mile away. You really can. That's so easy to see. Because really, at the end of the day, the only thing they can talk about is the bullet points in the book or the bullet points in the course they took. Almost like you could go. I don't even know if they still do this, but when I was in school, we used to have like the class planning list. Like, this would show what we're going to do this semester, if they still do that. Yeah, like they could just hit those bullet points. They could tell you about those bullet points, almost like they studied for the test, if you will. And honestly, if they done that, they gained no wisdom from the entire path working, as sadly as that is, right? And here's why. Wisdom is defined as the quality of being wise, power of judging rightly, and following the soundest course of action based on knowledge, experience, understanding, and good judgment. Okay? So remember that definition you can. What is this, immortal? What minimum amount of time for a path working to obtain wisdom? That is a tricky one. So, for example, I can give a good example from my personal experience, right? You all know that Dragon Magic 101, it's a pretty meaty course. Now, during that course, I actually do give time minimums that you need to do. I say if you want to extend it, fine, but there are minimums. In truth, that is just to get to the end of that particular path working. That is to complete the path working. If you take the absolute minimum, you will probably get some wisdom and understanding from that path working. But at the same time, if you continue those practices, if you apply it longer, you're going to continue to get deeper meanings, deeper understandings from it. And I want to say off the top of my head, I want to say that's like a 6 to 8 month path working if we don't count the staff ritual. Because if you count the staff ritual, it skyrockets. But the staff ritual is not required to complete it. That being said, so we know that bare minimum to complete Dragon Magic 101 should be like 6 to 8 months, right? That's the bare minimum, right? I literally have people emailing me and asking me about Dragon Magic 102 when they've supposedly completed 101 in 2 weeks, right? They were able to complete it in 2 weeks is exactly what they said. So we, like, anyone who knows anything about path working and Magic, basically they sat down, they watched the videos, and they didn't do anything. Let's just be honest. So yeah, there. Don't think of about what is the minimum. Look at follow whatever your path working is. Do the work, but also take time to sit with it, think on it, meditate on it, and go back. Right. I want to say it's like we spend a week or 2 weeks with each ruler in Dragon Magic 101. That is the minimum time you should be spending with that ruler. Me personally, when I did that initial path working, I actually ended up spending a couple months with each ruler. And though that's something I would say, like if you took Dragon Magic 101 or the meditation path working, or if you're following the Norse path working, anytime I purchase a path working or use a one, don't just complete it and set it on the shelf. Do it again. Go back, redo the exercises, spend time with it. Go back, spend time with each of the rulers, Terrafana, Ingus Salor. Spend time with them. Truly live your life in that path working in a way that you can truly absorb that wisdom, because wisdom comes from actual experience. The most, if like you blitz through something, you might be able to pass a question and multiple choice or question and answer thing, but wisdom was not gained. Okay, because knowledge and wisdom are not the same under any circumstances, immortal, if that makes sense. um Heck, Buddha actually referred to wisdom as the most precious of riches. And I've actually heard dragons talk about this. So I actually kind of find that one pretty cool. Um, Now, while I was prepping for this, I don't know if this is direct, but I do know it's in Proverbs somewhere. I didn't have time to go grab all my different Bibles to research the exact paraphrasing on it, but Proverbs would say something along the lines of, get wisdom, get understanding, do not forsake wisdom, and she will protect you. Love her, and she will watch over you. Wisdom is supreme, therefore get wisdom. So we're seeing multiple um, philosophical and spiritual concepts where they're really continuing to put that wisdom on a pedestal, and for good reason. And though you all know I'm not a religious guy, as a mage, I do try to walk and look at things wisely, because I do want to stay level headed. I wanted to find the most sound course of action, knowledge, experience. I want to actually understand something. I don't want to just know something. I want to fully understand it. And any of those who've been in the supporter chats, especially like last Friday, we had some amazing questions last Friday. You guys were asking how I was breaking things down. And, I told you guys, when I read something, I don't just read it. I actually try to root back through the source materials and everything, because I want to truly, truly understand it. Um, and I will sit and meditate on it quite a bit. Um, Now, that being said, with wisdom being so important, how would we actually go about cultivating it in our lives, right? One of the whole points of this Mage Minded series is to try and start cultivating this stuff. How do we pursue gaining of wisdom? And this is actually where a lot of people do have problems, because wisdom actually does take quite a bit of effort to cultivate. It's kind of like a tree, right? If I take an acorn out and plant it, I don't suddenly have a tree tomorrow. It's not going to happen overnight. It's something that you really, really got to take your time. And you can't just sit down and read a book. There are plenty of books on philosophy. There's plenty of books on wisdom. Yes, you can read them. Yes, you can quote them. But if you read them and just memorize the quotes, that's not really getting it. You got to sit there and figure out, what's that quote actually saying? What is the core meaning of it? And there's been a loss of this concept over the years. I really do truly believe that. Um, though it is possible. Like if you sit down and you read a book, one book that's been mentioned to the supporters, I think we even mentioned it during the last Mage Minded, Modern Bushido. It's a fantastic book. I love it. And I would view it as a book on wisdom. I really would. In fact, it's one of the books I even, flipped through to jog my memory while prepping for this. So you could sit down, you could read that book. Does reading that book make you wise? No, reading that book means you read the book, so you gained knowledge from it. Could you read the book and think you're wise? Yes, but thinking you're wise and being wise are two different things. Let's be honest. So, like I said, there's a big difference between knowledge and wisdom. First off, think of knowledge like if you just learned a bunch of facts and stats and everything, so you could go and be on a game show, right? You could answer the questions. All right. Perfect example. Most people I know can just rattle off stats of professional sports teams left and right. I can't do it. I'm not even going to try. I'll be honest, I can't do it. Also, most of those people could never play professional sports of any kind. They have the knowledge, they don't have the ability, they don't have the understanding, they don't have the discipline, they are lacking. Okay? So, the first step actually to wisdom is actually to try and seek out knowledge. Wisdom is based in knowledge. You have to start in knowledge. You really do. You need to start in knowledge and what you know. So you need to actually constantly be learning. That's one reason I encourage people constantly be learning. I've learned over the years that even the laziest idiot, if they constantly set out to learn something every day, they're going to find wisdom. They will trip and fall over it, but they're going to find it somehow, some way, right? Is that the most efficient way? No. No, it would be a bit more efficient if they were mindful about it. But it can be done that way, right? And the trick is when you are learning, seek to understand it fully, seek to understand why it's done, right? And seek to understand how it applies to you. How can it apply to your life, right? Now, this may sound silly, but when I think about cultivating my life, when I think about cultivating wisdom in my life, I focus on learning things and knowledge bases that can directly impact me, right? This is kind of why I don't have any sports stats in my head. First off, I don't have an interest in sports. It doesn't relax me. It's just not my thing. So even as a recreational thing, I don't have the stats. And honestly, those stats will do me absolutely no good in my personal life and better me in any shape, form, or fashion. So I don't have those. So I wouldn't even be able to begin to talk sports and deeper understandings thereof, right? But I do constantly try and learn things that does directly affect me, whether it be health wise, whether it be work wise. Like you all know, I don't like technology. Yet at the same time, to do this, to run this community, to reach the people I reach, I have had to force myself to learn a great deal about technology and not just learn how to make it do what it does, but I kind of needed to understand the why it does it. Because I have to troubleshoot stuff on the fly. And if I can't troubleshoot it, if I just know how to turn it on and how to make it do the thing, I can't troubleshoot it. You know what I mean? So there is that deeper understanding. And honestly, the deeper your understanding goes, the more you can apply it to your life. And this goes big time with Magick. It really does. So one of the things, like I heard this from God, it was years ago. Um, it's an old martial arts saying, but I love it. It's stuck with me. Um, and it essentially goes that there are only really two important belts in martial arts, the white belt and the black belt. And the only reason these are important is one represents the beginning of one's journey. The other, the black belt, represents one's beginning of understanding. Okay. I love that saying, and it's stuck with me throughout my years because think about it. If you know anything about martial arts, even if you've just casually heard about them, you know it can take years of your life to study, practice, develop all the techniques to go from white to black belt, right? So think about that. All these years long, you don't understand what you're doing. You're just training, you're just building the knowledge base. And it's only when you get here at the end of that belt system that you begin to understand it, that you truly begin your understanding. And honestly, anyone who's done the work to go from white to black They know that's a true thing. They really do. Because the way one practices martial arts, the way one composes themselves, if they've actually been seeking that true mastery and understanding of it, they know it's a completely different view of the world once you get there. Okay. All right. Let's see. I do have a few notes here I'm trying to use. Anybody got any questions so far while I'm gazing through my notes? If you have a question, drop it in there so I can grab it. I know Immortal had a good one earlier, but we already got that one. So it's actually interesting. So I actually had a friend years and years ago. Um, he's passed away since, but he told me that I should actually work more on trying to be wise enough to learn and gain wisdom from those who've already had experience than to be foolish enough to require to repeat the experience and hardships that they've already gone through for me to gain the wisdom. And yeah, so that really hit home with me because I'll be honest with you, I love to sit and talk with people, veterans. I've always hung out with people older than me to talk about their life experiences. And even though I did that, even though I'm hearing what they're telling me, there's a lot of times I had to do something stupid before what they were trying to tell me clicked. And that is something. Be wise enough to actually listen. I don't care if they're your enemy. I don't care if you have a sworn nemesis in your life. Listen, pay attention. You can gain wisdom from them. You really can. So be observant to the world around you. A good chunk of wisdom can actually come from your observation of the world if you're not too hard headed to listen. I've been pretty hard headed in my life. Grant you, I'm starting to learn that. I'm starting to listen better. I'm starting to pay more attention, right? So those who are younger and everything, start listening before I did. It'd make life a lot easier. Matthias, do you think a good way of putting it would be the understanding you gain through personal experiences and reflection on the experience? That would be a good way to do it. Yes. But you do have to sit down and you have to think about it calmly. You have to look at it from all sides because if you just emotionally look at an experience, you're going to miss the wisdom in there. Does that make sense? You actually have to break down and find the good in the experience, find the actual lessons that show benefit to you. This is another thing where we do have a lot of problems because there are a lot of people who only look at an experience from an emotional lens. They only want to stir it up into another reason to bitch or talk about the drama in their life, throw it up on social media for the clicks. Or, I mean, we all know that person who just, no matter how good their life's going, they want to play the victim, right? Same thing. They have the experience, but they're only viewing it through that singular lens. They're not going in for that deeper meaning, that deeper understanding where they're actually gaining those wisdoms. And if they're not doing that, they're not gaining the wisdom. So you got to make sure you're doing that. You got to make sure you are reflecting on it. You've got to really turn that lens on yourself and you've got to step outside the emotions and look objectively at the entirety of the experience. What can you learn from this experience? What can you gain to benefit your life from this experience, no matter how good or bad the experience is? And what can you take forward? How can this experience, again, no matter how good or bad, how can this entire experience enrich you as a person going forward and even help you to avoid the situation again, right? Um, if you're dumb enough to go to the same restaurant and every time you go there, you get food poisoning and end up with the trots, and you keep going there once a week and every week you get food poisoning and you keep going 20 times. Okay, you know the restaurant gives you food poisoning, but you never got wise enough to stop going. So I'm saying the experience is there, not the wisdom. So that is definitely a portion of it, Matthias. Very good. Um, but like I was saying, learning from those who've already been there, that is something I've seen repeated pop up over and over in multiple philosophy books. So that one has really stuck with me throughout the years. In fact, it's kind of funny because it sort of popped up in a quote that I read today in a book prepping for this by Confucius. And it said that Confucius taught there were three methods of attaining wisdom. He said, we may learn wisdom first by reflection. This is the noblest. Second, by imitation, which is the easiest. And third, by experience, which is the bitterest. Clearly, most of my life, I opted for number three, which honestly, it was also the painful version and painful road. So, at least from Confucius's viewpoint, those were the three main methods to which wisdom came from. And again, you do see that listening to people, learning from their experiences, taking that to heart. When was the last time you sat down, had a conversation with strangers, people you know, people you like, people you hated, and you actually put your phone down? Okay, you put the phone down, you look, you're paying attention, you're taking in every word they say, you're not interrupting them, you're not jumping up with ooh, and you're actually listening. And as they talk, you're actually thinking through the process. You're actually thinking about what they're saying. How would you deal with that? What would happen if that happened to you? How would you deal with that? How would, have you actually sat down and listened to that in that manner? I'll be honest, most people this day and age don't. I can't remember the last time I went anywhere where people sit down and talk, where people weren't staring at the phone the whole time. Newsflash, if you're not paying attention and locked in on the conversation, you're not going to get the wisdom. You're going to miss it because you're going to be too busy looking at your phone, reading whatever you're looking at, checking your text, watching cat videos, whatever it is people do that requires them to be on their phone 24/7. Why you go to a lunch to see somebody and stay on your phone. Anyway, that's a pet peeve of mine. Sorry. Pay attention and also reflect on your day, reflect on your experiences. Yes, we can actually talk about some reflection tips. That is actually sit down, meditate on it, think about it, actually examine it, and look at it first. Start with the lens of what did you do wrong? How could you have handled this better? Look at that. Start with that. Because a lot of people like to start with, how did I handle this right? How was I not at fault? And then it gets harder to go back and re-examine it. So actually start on the negative side and end on the positive side when you do go back and reflect. But make a point to sit down and think. Also write in a journal. I keep telling you guys, keep a journal. When you're in meditation, when you're reflecting, your daily meditations, sit down and meditate and reflect on those events. The first thing I do is, what are the major events of today? And I try to rerun those. And I think about them. No matter how small or large, if it's an event that's stuck in my head, I try to examine it. But I also try to live mindfully to the point where I try to pay attention. Like if something distracts me and I'm not paying attention to somebody who's talking to me, I actually feel like shit because I feel like I was ignoring them. And I don't like doing that. But yeah, take the time, meditate on it, reflect on it, and look at yourself and examine it and pick it apart. Pick it every bit apart and come back to it. The beauty of having a journal is you can come back to it also. So you revisit it. Don't just reflect on it that day. Revisit it. I do about twice a month. I go back through my journal and everything I've wrote down and I revisit it. It's one of those things I constantly doing a revisit on in order to improve. Because there's always lessons we can learn. We can always continue to grow. This was actually one that I dug up too that I liked. I'm going to try and pronounce this name. It looks like Epicurus stated we must not pretend to study philosophy, but really study it. For it is not seeming healthy that we need, but true health. I'm sorry, this smacks in the face of pretty much a lot of what we've been talking about, including thinking about how we handle path workings, right? If you're doing a path working in a week or 2 weeks when it's supposed to take 6 months or a year, clearly you're pretending, right? Just like I could tell you all, hey, look at this. I've done this with my health, or I've done this. That does, like, regardless of what I say to you, does that actually make me healthy? Right? It doesn't do it, right? I'm still where I'm at health wise, right? Um, oh, did I say it right? Cool. All right, somebody actually knows that person, so I said it right. Woo, go me. We all know I suck with names. But I do think that is a good one. And I also think it really tracks for the magical practitioner, especially when we're trying to get wisdom, because we don't need to just learn a bunch of facts. I know a lot of people out there. They can quote you every ability of an herb. They can quote you every ability of a crystal. They can quote you every technical association of a deity in a pantheon or multiple pantheons. And yet they're in the same place now as when they started practicing magic, or they've made very little progress with the progress they've made. Think about that. That's because they have knowledge of these things, knowledge of the things that you can find in any book or Google on the internet, but they haven't actually dove deeper. They've not gone under that surface level to understand the deeper meanings of it. And honestly, those deeper meanings can affect your manifestations. It's not enough just to know A, B, C equals D. That's not enough. There's it's not. You actually need to understand the bits and bobbles of why. Because if you don't understand those bits and bobbles, doubt creeps in very easily, very quickly. Um, let's see. Any other questions? See, Ethan, I reflect a lot, but sometimes I miss details. Um, that's why we always go back. We always go back. We always reflect, and we're always learning. Um, for those who think I'm wise, I tell them it's just because I've done a lot of dumb stuff, honestly. There's still plenty of things that I reflect on often, um, that I've been struggling with for years, and I'm getting better. I get better every day with it, but I still got a long way to go. Um, hell, my health has been one of them, right? Many of y'all know my weight for during COVID just kind of went carpow, because I'd never done the whole sit down job gig, and um, my activity levels dropped, but my eating levels didn't, right? So I ballooned up way past anything I wanted, and it did. It was affecting my life. Uh, and in my pursuit to correct health and get back in shape and do a lot of things, I had to really dive into a lot of actual issues with my relationship with food and other things that I've never had to dive into. And it's something that I'm constantly working on. And yeah, but I've learned a lot. And now I'm at the point where, you know, I understand me, I understand my relationship with food. I understand I've dove into not just, you know, losing weight, but I've dove into the studies of different things, the microbiology. How does the body actually use food? Why does things actually happen? I actually sought more than just how do I lose weight. I sought an understanding deeper into that and gained a wisdom from it. And that wisdom has honestly changed my life. I've got way more energy. I'm feeling better than I have in probably 30 years, to be honest with you. So don't be afraid to go back, and don't view yourself as a failure just because you have to go back and look over it. The same event can teach you things every time you look at it. The same event can. Absolutely freaking can. Um, so, you know, taking the time, slowing down, looking into it, seeking that, you know, it it's a long thing, you know. It takes that life experience, and it is hard. And if you make notes of life experiences and everything, you can quickly be, it can affect you. It can come into play. I know people, honestly and truly, if I was to ask them how to change a spark plug, they couldn't tell me, but they could probably recite every Pokemon that's ever been made. And I think we're up over 300 of them things by now. Um, unless I'm a video game designer, I don't know how that knowledge would serve me. So, you know, we do also need to consider how we're spending our time, what we're spending our time learning, um, those kinds of concepts. And there's also like you can, that's arguable. You could overlearn. You could think about it, because if all you're doing is one path working after the other, you're not actually sitting, spending time living that path working after you've done the path working. You go back and you learn the lessons, you sit time, to truly absorb it, gain those deeper lessons, and you just jump to the next, you just jump to the next, you jump to the next. You're never going to really soak up that deeper meaning. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do multiple pathworks, and I'm not saying you shouldn't try that. But obviously, Dragon Magic's not the only one I've done. But at the same time, I do try to put the bulk of my focus into one thing so that I can absorb and get as deep a meaning of it as I can. And at this point in my life, the place where I have settled is really in that Norse and the Dragon Magic areas. Everything else I touch on, I try to learn, I try to apply it, and I do try to revisit, and I do try to gain wisdom, but it has never replaced those things for me. Would I suggest? Yeah, absolutely. I review my pathworking notes all the time. I review my pathworking notes. So for example, let's look at Dragon Magic 101. I would actually review each section's notes after the section. So um, when it came to the Guardian Dragon, I would take my notes, take my notes, take my notes, take my notes, take my notes. I would work all the way through the Guardian Dragon pathworking up to where, hey, it's time to go find your co-magician. Before I did that, I reviewed all those notes. I sat down and spent an entire day meditating, if not a couple days, meditating, thinking them over, talking to my guardian about them, looking at what lessons I can, and actually taking more notes on that, right? That's what I would do before I moved on to that next section. And I did that with each section as I did it. And I do that with every path working. So yeah, I'm all about reviewing the notes and taking the time to meditate. Slow down, people. Take time to actually absorb and understand what you're doing. Don't just do it to get it done. Understand why it's being done. That's one of the reasons I love the new community too, is because it actually gives us a place in the courses to ask questions and share a lot better. Okay, I lost my spot. All right, any questions? Oh, I did see a quote that actually got me like, I'll be honest, I've been actually meditating on this for a little over a week now. Um, I want to say the name is Takuna Soho. Desires are brought to life depending upon one's wisdom. Wisdom gives direction to desire, right? That I've been meditating on a lot, because in Magic, we talk about intent. We talk about directing your intent into your workings. And the reason I've been meditating on this, a lot of people do try to use the word desire. What's your desire? What is it you're trying to manifest, right? And but what if wisdom actually might be technically more important than intent and desire? This is what I've been meditating on. And I don't really have a hard answer, but it's something to consider. Because one thing that I have noticed, and I've looked through a lot of my journals over this week, the better I understand that which I am trying to manifest in Magic, the easier it is to manifest it. Think about that. The better I actually understand something, the more wisdom I have on a topic or subject or something that I'm trying to manifest, the inner workings of it, how it works, how it functions, the easier it is to manifest. And the thing that really came to me this week, when like there's a lot, but the one that hit hard was the wealth series we did over at YouTube for a while, where we were talking about, what money is, how money functions, how does finances function, what does prosperity actually do. And I never thought about it, but all those things we talked about were talking of giving you knowledge and wisdom on how they function, because if you understood the function, you could manifest them easier. And that's kind of got me like, should I reshuffle and say intent's not the most important thing? Should I? It's one of those things. I still got more meditating on to do, but think about that. Think about it. Let's see. What is this? What do you mean chaining them together, Ethan? There's no way to shorten the time of the staff if that's what you're trying to do. You can only do one ruler at a time with the staff. Only one. It is generally recommended to complete the entirety of the path working before you actually do the staff. Um, that would depend on the person. Generally speaking, depends on your development and how easily you are fatigued, what your physical health is. If you do have some kind of physical limitation, you find yourself overly exhausted, um, you might want to give yourself a rest in between it. You really might. All right. So that's pretty much that's where we're at on this. We need to seek that deeper understanding in all aspects of our life, but magic too. The more you understand it, the better, right? I actually had one person compare it to making mayonnaise, right? You tell someone what's in mayonnaise and how to make homemade mayonnaise. If you don't teach them how to do it and why you do it a specific way, they're not going to have mayonnaise. They're going to have liquid yuck in a jar. It won't turn into mayonnaise. It won't take hold. Your sauce will break. So now, if you need to space it, because each time you do the ruler, you're locking that one in. So, but you don't want to take too much of a break. So only take like a day or two because you do need to kind of get that thing done. You don't want it to bleed out. But that's something for another time. That's a little less wisdom, more on the Dragon Magic 101. All right, folks. Any questions on wisdom before we cut here? See if we can get any last minute questions. And while those are coming in, everybody do remember we do have a online community. Come join us over here. Supporters get access to the online school, all the courses in it. They also get free access to all the live workshops we do. At the time of recording this, we got a workshop coming up on wards and another one in the near future on servitors. No questions? I don't think so. Okay, everybody's good. Apparently, I did my job. All right. All right, tell everybody. Whoa, this is the downside of live. All right, everybody. Until next time, I'm Drake. This has been Working Dragon Mystic. Take care.